Thank you for joining me, Dr. Hamid. The current wave of violence in England has been described as the worst England has seen since the 2011 riots. Do you think we can draw any parallels between the current unrest and the violence that happened 13 years ago? And how would you describe the current state of Islamophobia in UK?
Yes, there are some parallels with 2011. This is quite a different set of circumstances in terms of the cause and the actual political dynamics. It bears resemblance in that it has a it has triggered, if you like, a national sense of panic. I mean, and indeed it is a moral panic, and there are many layers to this particular issue, why it happened, how it happened, and its ongoing repercussions. In brief, I think you're aware that the initial trigger point was, or the alleged trigger point was the tragic murder of three little girls in northwest town of Southport. However, um, many people have observed that this current social disturbance is as a result of decades of, uh, if you like, mood music being provided actually by the very mainstream institutions of our society, both politicians, the rhetoric of politicians, the way the mainstream, large parts of the mainstream media have demonized Muslim communities, in the way that Islamophobia really, especially in the last 20 years, has almost become mainstreamed. If one reads the newspapers, and in particular, one can see, in particular, some of the right-wing newspapers, it's become normalized. It's almost a daily diet of negative stories against Muslims and Islam. They are associated with kind of fixed frames, which link them with either uh, extremism, social criminality, or as a indigestible minority that is problematic. And Muslims, their position, their loyalty has been questioned continuously, particularly since the terrorist attacks of 2005, nearly 20 years ago. So, in a way, this is a trigger point which, eh, you know, uh, is kind of how can I say? It was almost inevitable, and the scale, I guess, has taken people aback, because what's happened is that there's been a coordinated attempt to uh, hold Muslims, uh, if you like, responsible for these murders, when we know clearly these murders were not committed by Muslims. It was, in fact, committed by a young boy who is of a Christian background, who was born in the UK. So this whole vitriol, and the violence that is being inflicted, is really an excuse for a deeper societal kind of structurally embedded racism and hatred of Muslims.
Of all the religiously motivated hate crimes in the UK, 39% of them have been against Muslims, which makes them the most targeted faith group. So during the 2011 riots, Keir Starmer was the director of public prosecutions. So do you think that experience or background makes him suitable to address this type of mob rule?
I'm not sure, to be honest. The actual details. I mean, I think there are some limitations in making to continue making the comparison with what happened in 2011. I think a more uh, perhaps closer parallel would be the 2001 northern uh, uh, social disturbances, which I don't know if you're familiar with. This is now 23 years ago. And again, it was a convergence of a number of different uh, underlying causes, and a sense of both from certain white working class communities, Muslim communities who were very fed up and tired of a very frequent experience of racist policing and the manipulation of the frustration of certain impoverished white working class communities by the far right. And this triggered riots in four different northern cities in 2001. And it became a very, a national, almost a national emergency. So this is more of a closer kind of comparison. And in both cases, it is the the figure of the Muslim that is kind of the focus. It's become about religion. It's become about Muslims as a minority faith group. When in actual fact, this is a diversion, a deflection from deeper, unresolved issues around uh, poverty, economic underdevelopment, the marginalization of certain communities, both Muslim and white working class communities. So what the media has done has framed it around religion, and these Muslims are, not integrating, and it's about Islam and a tendency towards violence and so on. And these are all distractions. And that's what I think is important for people outside of the UK to understand. It's actually not even nothing to do with religion, actually. It's to do with failure of successive governments in the UK to deal with more deeper issues of social justice and the neglect of uh, certain communities and the turning of, if you like, the condoning of uh, institutional, racial, and religious discrimination. And again, this is linked to the aftermath or the ongoing legacies of the so-called war on terror. It is, and it's even arguably long. It's even has a longer history to do with the UK's unresolved colonial nostalgia and the inability of the British establishment to really come to terms with what they did across the world and its loss of power and importance in the world. So the UK, in recent years has tried to certainly the most recent government, the Conservative government, have tried to return to an imperial nostalgia about how Great Britain was and how it did so many great things. And if you do not accept this great British narrative, you are an outsider. And then Muslims become a very easy target because Muslims are critical subjects. Muslims have a different experience on the receiving end of this imperial nostalgia. And it is tied again, as I think you're probably aware, with similar currents across Europe and actually globally. There is an increasing Islamophobia. So there are different layers, and all of these, it's like almost a perfect storm. And it just happened to be that it's come on the back of a tragedy and the death of innocent children. But really, there are many people in the establishment here in the UK who are looking for ways to blame Muslims for the failures of the successive governments and the unresolved intercultural, interfaith uh, realities of the UK today.
Mark Owen Jones is one of the disinformation researchers, and he found out that the tweets falsely speculating that the South Put attacker was a Muslim, immigrant, foreigner, or refugee, they got around 27 million impressions. So, the Online Safety Act, which was passed under the previous government, do you think that can adequately manage these type of disinformation campaigns if it is properly implemented?
I guess I'm quite skeptical about that because these mechanisms have been in place for some time, and certainly through social media platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, they have not prevented uh, the widespread dissemination of anti-Muslim, uh, you know, disinformation, fake news, and outright hatred, and not only kind of against Muslims, but racism, outright racism, and far right rhetoric. And certainly since Elon Musk purchased Twitter or X, he's made it clear himself and demonstrated his own complicity in allowing the circulation and dissemination of this on his own site. So, I mean, while these um, the certain legislation is there, certain social media companies have made certain commitments. In practice, I don't think it's made a material change because we are still seeing hatred being shared very freely. And also, we see that. I mean, and it's more difficult to regulate on WhatsApp, for example. So people, how do you manage this? It's a very difficult thing, and what I would say is the social the social media, the internet, the online phenomena is actually is a symptom of our human offline world. I mean, there's an interaction there, obviously, but tackling online hatred is, yes, it's important, but really the real battle is in the real world, the offline world of actual uh, interpersonal human relationships, and how and what we can do, how and what we can do about tackling ignorance, hatred, and division within our societies. And that is a global problem, as we are seeing levels of intolerance and division increasing nowadays, unfortunately. And anti-Muslim hatred is one of those things. And we also have anti-Semitism, we have racism, we have other forms of discrimination. But this is a challenge of our times, isn't it?
You talked about Elon Musk and Twitter. So there is a right wing influencer by the name of Tommy Robinson who has largely manipulated the right wing mob into taking these sorts of actions. So Elon Musk, after taking ownership of the Twitter, he started to reinstate these accounts which were previously blocked. So to what extent is Elon Musk responsible for fueling this disinformation which leads to then violence?
Yeah, I mean, as I alluded to in my previous answer, Elon Musk is very much complicit in this. He has, uh, I think, just the other day, retweeted Tommy Robinson, so his involvement is clear. He is even worse. He is almost goading, or trying to provoke the likes of Tommy Robinson's followers into talking about the inevitability of civil war in Europe. So Elon Musk is very much part of the problem.
Final question, Dr. Hamid. During the riots, we saw images of locals and volunteers coming together to clean up and repair the damage. Do you think that is the true accurate representation of the British society than the negative images that we are seeing from unrest and disorder?
Yes, that is actually, I would say, representative of uh, the majority, I would say. It's difficult to quantify these things, but I would agree with the premise of the question that many uh, uh, white uh, people have been very supportive of Muslim communities during this, and we've seen many examples of them coming forward, uh, um, defending Muslim communities, Muslim places of worship, and showing that you know the British history has always had a tradition of people standing up for justice, standing up for minorities, and promoting human rights, and defending uh, uh, you know communities that are oppressed, and that is one of the truly great things about Britain. And so that's something that makes is reassuring to an extent, and we welcome that, and it should something that should be celebrated and something that should be increased and supported I think there's a lot of work to be done still. White British society is not homogenous. So while, we have racists, we have, as as you indicated, there are lots of good white people, and I think it's up to Muslim communities themselves. Uh, we can all do more to help bridge the divides in our that are, that are present in our society, and you know, work together to tackle these problems, and they can be tackled, but it can't be just left to communities either. And what I mean by that is institutions need to take ownership of the role that they're playing in keeping our societies divided, because there are political agendas at play here, and we can't be naive about that. There are certain elements of society that benefit from keeping certain racial stereotypes and negative kind of tropes about certain minorities, particularly Muslims and Islam. They There is a darker political kind of agenda at play, and that has been well documented. There are people who profit off fear and you know causing conflict, and it is and we again, I think you're aware, there are, in this particular case of this social disturbance, eh, there are actors that are external to the UK. So again, it's no secret that you mentioned Tommy Robinson as a figurehead who, in his historical kind of activities, has mobilized a the remnants of previous racist far right groups. But Tommy Robinson himself has been financially supported by the Israeli government. Tommy Robinson has also been paid uh, uh, on by a certain right wing conservative, neoconservative American uh, interest as well. And all of this stuff, all of these things are well documented. These aren't conspiracy theories. These are things that anybody can go and check. So one, we have to be careful about just reducing it to a British problem. There is a international dimension to this, and it is linked to the changing dynamics of international relations, and particularly what is going on in the Middle East at the moment, and of course the ongoing genocide of the Palestinians. So I think we have to have a sophisticated analysis of what is going on, and um, I think all decent, fair-minded people, are disgusted and concerned about what is going on. But I think this is a temporary phenomena. I think it will die down soon, but it really, the politicians and the media in particular have to, uh, you know, take responsibility for the role that they played, which is unlikely to happen. But I think ordinary citizens need to continue to point that out, and people of good faith need to continue to work together to help us move on from this difficult time.
Thank you for your time and insights. Appreciate it.
You're most welcome.